their commitment to those players?
No, but that's fantastic to see, right? It's all about the growth and the evolving in the tennis world. You know, it's such a global sport. So seeing that, and even watching Fonseca last night against Sinner, which was, you know, maybe the best hitting match so far of the tournament on the men's side, and seeing the Brazilian fans. I mean, that's what you kind of want. You know, you want that new atmosphere.
Tommy Haas has spent his entire life inside professional tennis. As a former world number 2, as a tournament director, as someone who has watched this sport from every angle imaginable. And when Alex Eala's name came up, he didn't reach for the usual careful language that people in his position tend to use. He said what he actually saw. And what he saw was something the WTA hasn't figured out how to respond to yet. What do you think the WTA should be doing differently for Eala right now? Drop it in the comments. Let's get into it. Start with the crowd situation, because it's the thing that makes everything else in this story make sense. At Indian Wells, before Eala had played a single competitive match, fans were already flooding the grounds. Not for a stadium court, not for a featured match, for a practice session. Broadcast analysts covering the tournament live were raising a specific concern: that the volume of supporters descending on her court assignments was becoming a genuine safety issue. One analyst said it directly on air. Hopefully the tournament can get her onto a bigger court so everyone stays safe, because the number of fans coming to support her is going to be enormous. That is not a normal thing to say about a player ranked 32nd in the world. That is not something that gets said about players who are merely promising or exciting or worth watching. That is what gets said when something genuinely unusual is happening, and the infrastructure around the sport hasn't caught up to it yet. Tommy Haas, as tournament director of Indian Wells, was watching all of it unfold in real time. And he was not quiet about what he thought.
Same for Eala, having all the Philippine fans from coming, you know, to support her. It's fantastic, and you know, supporting the next generation. You know, even Mboko, who's doing really well here as well. So it's like you see the next generation, the young generation, hyping up the tennis world, and that's what it's all about.
Haas was asked directly, had he ever seen anything like the commitment of the Filipino fans, the crowds that were showing up specifically for Eala at every tournament she entered? His answer was no, he hadn't. He also framed it in terms of what Indian Wells is supposed to represent. Not just an elite tennis event, but an environment where new atmosphere, new energy, and new fan bases are welcomed rather than managed as logistical problems. That framing matters, because there's a version of this conversation where tournament directors see overwhelming crowds as something to contain. Haas chose to see it as something to celebrate. And the difference between those two responses has real consequences for how Eala's rise gets treated by the institutions around her.
Sport. How about the Filipino fans? For Alex Eala has become an absolute phenomenon on the courts. There's an early Verizon vantage point on TC Live. Everywhere she goes, she gets swarmed by her fans, Coco.
Swarmed is right, Steve. And look, this is the great thing. The security guard fumbled the rope, and that was almost the worst part of the event. But you can get as close and personal with your favorite players, and that's why I always say this event, the BNP Paribas Open, is the best fan experience you can possibly get. Alex Eala having her first opportunity at the main draw here at Indian Wells. That's how fresh and new she is to.
Because the crowd story at Indian Wells wasn't unique to Indian Wells. It was a continuation of something that had been building across multiple tournaments and multiple continents. In Dubai, every single one of Eala's matches sold out completely. The tournament director there, who had been running the event since 2019, hosting world number ones and defending Grand Slam champions, said he had never witnessed anything like it in his entire tenure. Not the biggest crowd, not a great atmosphere, something unprecedented. In Australia, fans were wrapped around stadiums trying to get in. Court assignments became a talking point because the venues she was being scheduled on couldn't physically contain the demand. Fellow players started commenting on it publicly. Jessica Pegula described being taken aback by the atmosphere when she played Eala at Miami the previous year. The whole crowd was against her, and she genuinely didn't know where all those people had come from. California has the largest Filipino population in the United States. Close to 2 million people, none of whom needed international flights to be there. They descended on Indian Wells with a volume that the tournament was simply not prepared for. And Haas saw all of it.
The surge is real and it's getting louder. Alex Eala has rocketed to a new career high, world number 31 in the latest Women's Tennis Association rankings, leaping 16 spots after a breakthrough quarter-final finish at the Dubai Tennis Championships. At just 20 years old, Eala is now closer than ever to the top 30 and firmly entrenched among the sport's rising elite. Dubai was more than a deep run.
Here's the detail that gives the crowd story its full weight. Eala's ranking at the start of 2026 was 137 in the world. After Dubai, she was ranked 31. That is not a gradual climb. That is a player who went from outside the top 100 to inside the top 32, earning a first-round bye at a WTA 1000 event for the first time in her career, in a stretch of tennis that covered just a few months. The crowds didn't arrive because she had a great marketing team or a carefully managed public profile. They arrived because the tennis was worth showing up for. 3 top 10 wins across Indian Wells and Dubai. A semi-final at Miami the previous year that beat Grand Slam champions and announced her to the global tennis audience. A left-handed game that creates angles and discomfort that right-handed opponents take weeks to adjust to. The fans showed up first. The results followed. And now, both are happening simultaneously at the same scale, which is the combination that genuinely changes what a player's presence means for a tournament.
My mom actually came out and watched me practice. She, Jenny knows the story, that's why she's giggling. She came out to watch and she's like, oh, I want to go watch Alex Eala play. Like, oh my gosh, I want to watch. My mom's Filipino, so she's crazy about Alex. And she's like, I'm going to come watch her when she plays on Thursday. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to be playing on Thursday. She's like, oh, yes, you too. Yes. I'm going to come watch you too.
The moment that crystallizes everything, and it came from the most unexpected place. A player being interviewed mentioned that their Filipino mother had called ahead of the tournament to say she was coming to watch Alex Eala play on Thursday. The player had to remind their own mother that they were also playing on Thursday. The mother's response was essentially, yes, and you too. That exchange got laughs. But it's also the most honest summary of what is happening around Eala right now. She has crossed the line from tennis player to cultural event. The audience showing up for her matches isn't just a tennis audience. It's a community that feels personally connected to her story. A community that plans its week around her schedule, that travels across countries and continents to be in the same building as her, that doesn't reduce its support after a loss. Tommy Haas understands what that means for a tournament. When a player brings that kind of loyalty into your venue, the energy changes. The television numbers change. The atmosphere in every corner of the grounds changes. That is not something you manage quietly. That is something you build around.
I think everyone is entitled to their own opinion, definitely. And being a public figure, my results are out there, my games are out there. It's inevitable that people will have comments, whether it's positive or negative. And I really appreciate the support, the positivity, and you're entitled to your own opinion, even if it's negative about me. My approach to it is that I have my team, and they will definitely tell me if there's criticism, or they will definitely provide me with constructive criticism. They work in my best interest. They also tell me, they also give me positive feedback. So that's of course, along with my own opinion and the opinion of my team is what I prioritize. And they definitely give me two sides, and I know that they have my best interest at heart. So that's what I focus on the most. All the positivity from, the public is an added plus. Yan.
And through all of it, the sold-out stadiums, the practice court safety concerns, the analysts debating whether she's the biggest draw in women's tennis right now, Eala herself has remained exactly the same. She doesn't chase the spotlight. She doesn't perform gratitude for the cameras. She talks about her team, her process, her preparation. And she does it with a composure that makes the chaos around her look even more remarkable by contrast. That quote about public opinion is the one that reveals the most. She's 20 years old. She's the subject of more attention and commentary than most players twice her age. And her response is to frame it in terms of constructive criticism and process. Not in terms of validation or noise. She's already figured out the thing that takes most athletes years to understand. That the outside conversation and the internal work are completely separate things. And only one of them actually matters. Haas pointed to exactly that quality as one of the reasons her influence might extend well beyond individual results. When fans see a player who competes fiercely and remains gracious regardless of outcome, the sport itself starts to feel more worth watching. The result stops being the only thing in the room. So here's where the WTA finds itself. A player who jumped from 137 to 31 in the world in a single season. Who sold out every match in Dubai and overwhelmed the capacity of courts at Indian Wells before her first match was scheduled. Who has beaten 3 top 10 players in her last 2 tournaments. Who has Tommy Haas calling the energy around her fantastic. Broadcast analysts comparing her draw to the biggest crowd moments in recent tennis history. And a former ATP professional requesting court reassignments on safety grounds. And the scheduling decisions, the court assignments, the structural responses from the tour haven't kept pace with any of it. Players like Pegula have said so publicly. Djokovic said so. The analysts covering the tournament said so live on air. The fans who were wrapped around stadiums trying to get in made the case more clearly than any interview could. Haas is enthusiastic. He sees the phenomenon clearly and he called it correctly. This is what growth looks like in a global sport. But enthusiasm from a tournament director and institutional response from the WTA are 2 different things. And right now, one of those is moving considerably faster than the other. Miami is next. The tournament where Eala announced herself to the world last year with a semi-final run that nobody saw coming. She goes back now as a seeded player, with more wins over top 10 opponents, with a fan base that hasn't shrunk after a loss, and with the full attention of the tennis world in a way that simply didn't exist 12 months ago. Tommy Haas said he'd never seen anything like it. The Dubai tournament director said the same. The broadcast analysts, the fellow players, the crowds pressing through fences at practice courts. They're all saying the same thing in different ways. The WTA has something rare on its hands. A player whose impact on the sport is already outrunning her ranking. The question isn't whether the institutions around her will eventually respond. The question is whether they'll do it before the story gets told without them. Hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What should the WTA actually be doing right now to get this right?